Popular Christian influencers Chip and Joanna just recently released a brand new show called Back to the Frontier, which takes modern Americans back to the late 19th century. And unfortunately, they missed history in this show because they showcase two gay men raising two small boys. And let's just say that if you went back to the late 19th century and that was happening a lot back then, you and I wouldn't exist.
Where is everybody?
I'll try to show you today why it's important for us not to fall as Christians for the gospel of tolerance and inclusion. My name is Reed Huberman. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch the show today. On the show, I'll try to give Christian arguments for cultural events because I believe we're living in an age of bad ideas, and the only cure for bad ideas are good ideas, and the best ideas are found in God's Word, and I'll try to provide evidence for that claim. Before I do that, I want to make sure that you know that today's show is sponsored by our friends over at Sweet and Savory. If you're looking for an online or in-person cooking class experience, and if you want to support godly businesses with godly values, and if you want to promote a culture of flourishing, then you need to support businesses like Sweet and Savory. Not only will you learn to cook some amazing food, but you'll do so in a fun and friendly environment. So if you want to see all the classes that they have coming up, then you need to go to sweetandsavoryclassroom.com, and when you check out, don't forget to use the promo code IndieThinker for a discount on your order. Now, unfortunately, there are still a large portion of modern Americans that do not realize, because they are blissfully unaware of the world that they are creating with their silence. They have an obligation to speak. They have an obligation to stand on biblical values. But very often, they're being led astray by very weak and lame arguments, or maybe even worse. They're being led astray by Christian influencers who find that it's very convenient and profitable to glom onto modern narratives and left-wing talking points because of the social currency that you can gain when you become respectable and tolerant and inclusive. For an example of this, I want to show you the constant source of disappointment, the folks over at the Holy Post and Phil Vischer, creator of VeggieTales.
Stand the cruelty of MAGA. Now, Christians within the MAGA movement can countenance cruelty.
Honestly, just makes me really sad. I want to have righteous indignation at things that deserve it. Jesus did that. I also want to grieve the way God's people are so easily manipulated into believing and behaving wrongly, and I don't want to lose any sight of my own susceptibility to that.
Now imagine with me, if you will, being so dishonest that you could look into a camera and say that anybody that supports Donald Trump's immigration policy is cruel. Sure, there are cruel people that exist everywhere and anywhere, but just the immigration policy of Donald Trump is not cruel itself. In fact, I think it's rather cruel for illegal immigrants to jump in line and get in front of people who are patiently waiting to get into this country legally. I think it's rather cruel to totally dismiss families like Lake and Riley's and their pain and to say illegal immigration is just great when we all know that unfettered immigration into this country is a bad thing. And the only way to cure it is to get rid of the people who came into this country illegally and then to welcome them back through the legal process. But of course, the folks over at the Holy Post will never give you any kind of thoughtful take on this. They will merely try to emotionally blackmail you and tell you that you aren't a loving Christian if by chance you think importing people from God knows where, who's done God knows what, might not be the best idea in the world. But why care about that when you have so much to gain from parroting left-wing talking points? Think about all the money you could gain from organizations like George Soros's. Now, that is an unfounded allegation as far as I know, but I'll just say that it surely seems a way to enrich yourself for many, I would say, gullible or very dishonest Christians. I bring this up because just recently, another Christian has fallen for the gospel of tolerance and inclusion, and Chip and Joanna just recently produced a show that supposedly takes people back to the late 19th century so that they can rough it, and on the show, they showcased two gay men who live together raising two small boys, as you'll see here.
Arriving next for the ultimate digital detox.
Oh, look at this.
You guys ready? Yep.
Our Dallas-based dads, the Hannah Riggs.
All of your tech here, phones, devices.
Okay.
What's first?
No more work. No more emails.
No more pings, no more bings everywhere we go.
Are you guys ready to get rid of these devices?
No.
Alexa, good morning.
I'm Jason Hanna.
My name is Joe Riggs.
We have our twin boys, Ethan and Lucas, that are 10 years old.
Now, for those of you who may be incredulous after seeing that, I can understand it. I love Chip and Joanna, and I think they're really good people. And they might just be misguided here, or they might have something to personally gain from this kind of quote-unquote representation. But for those of you who think that maybe this is a mistake, they just didn't know about it, that wouldn't be a good excuse anyway, but I assure you they do. Back in 2023, Chip and Joanna did an interview with USA Today, and it says this, that once they launch their own network, however, Chip and Joanna plan to feature many shows that star people of color. In fact, there will be at least one show on launch day with an openly queer talent at its center. And if that's not enough for you, Chip spoke out during this controversy with Back to the Frontier, and he said this, talk, ask questions, listen, maybe even learn. Too much to ask for modern American Christian culture? Judge first, understand later? Never. It's a sad Sunday when non-believers have never been confronted with hate or vitriol until they are introduced to a modern American Christian. Well, there we go, Chip. That's the kind of emotional blackmail we love to see that the left has used forever. Now, I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of having to constantly cater to a supposedly marginalized identity group just because they are incredibly vocal and annoying, while Christians have to incessantly capitulate to the demands of this supposedly marginalized group. I think it's high time that we actually stood up firm for what we believe in unapologetically and cared about the world that we're creating for the next generation. So here is what is wrong with the gospel of tolerance and inclusion. First and foremost, it isn't biblical. The idea that tolerance is a biblical virtue is total nonsense. Neither is empathy, by the way. I know that we're supposed to be loving, but let me be really clear with you. Love is not unconditional acceptance. You wouldn't do this with your child. You wouldn't unconditionally accept anything your child does, but you love your child. You love your child enough to tell them the truth. You love your child enough to say, hey, you're brushing your teeth whether you like it or not, because it is what's best for you. The idea that love means accepting everyone's behavior and accepting them for who they are is utterly ridiculous. We want what's best for people, and that is what true love is truly all about. The Bible says that love rejoices in the truth. Now, I know this will cause Christians everywhere to say, well, yes, love is the ultimate commandment, and didn't Jesus hang out with prostitutes and sinners? Yes, of course he did. But are we really of the impression that Jesus did so just so that he could watch the game and have a brew with them, just so that he could show how awesome and tolerant he is of everything? Or did he hang out with them to help them find the hope and the peace that could help them change their life? Go and sin no more at the end of the day is the message, not, hey, we just want to make you have warm, fuzzy feelings. Honestly, this is the evangelism of most Christians today. They think that they will really get this badge of honor and be seen as conscientious and loving if they can just tolerate enough sin. That is not the love of Jesus Christ, nor should it be practiced by any single Christian ever, anywhere. And by the way, if there's any confusion about this, the second thing I would mention is that tolerance isn't practiced by the people who preach it all the time. I mean, honestly, tell me the last time you watched a movie from modern Hollywood where it had a strong Christian male, especially lead.
I would say arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin.
So this is how liberty dies.
And he wasn't compromised somewhere at the end of the movie where he doesn't turn in to be the bad guy, really. And the people who are the real good people are the non-religious people who are maybe just spiritual. Of course, we all know the truth here. The most recent example of this is Conclave, which is, of course, about the Catholic Church and the fact that the Pope, in the end, spoiler, is intersex because he doesn't have twig and berries after all. Ooh, moral conundrum. What do we do now? Of course, some way they have to find a way to attack Christians at every turn. But of course, it's expected of us to shut up, sit down, and listen to everything that they have to say because they are the truly tolerant, intolerant ones. This is nothing less than a tool of blackmail to shut people up so that they can further their agenda. And I, for one, am not having it. I don't care what name you call me. I don't care how you try to extort and blackmail me. I am going to stand for truth. I'm going to try to do it in the most loving way possible, but that does not mean including and advocating for two gay men raising two little boys. And here's another reason why the gospel of tolerance and inclusion isn't even practiced by our enemies. You know why? Because it's impossible. I mean, go to Disney and you'll see them endlessly try to represent everything under the sun. But you can't honestly, truly represent everything. It almost always just turns into, hey, guess what? I have this great idea, guys. So wild pitch, but our new show, guess what's going to have? A gay character. Oh, wow, fantastic. That writing is so amazing. I can't imagine anything better than a gay character. So ultimately, it's impossible to identify all the different orientations and proclivities of people in a single show. You would have 6 billion characters. While it is perfectly fine to represent people from other races and tell different kinds of stories, race swapping is dumb, and so is trying to advocate for sexual perversion on a TV show. Now, not everybody agrees with my definition of what that is, but Chip and Joanna should. And it is impossible to tolerate all of these identities. Beyond that, you also shouldn't. There are some things that are not worthy of celebration because not all identities are equal. See, this is why Jesus never preached the gospel of tolerance and inclusion, because it's predicated upon an idea that you have your morality and I have my morality. It's predicated on moral relativism, that there is absolutely no absolute truth. And if you're wondering, yes, that is an inane, contradictory idea.
Yep.
There is absolute truth, and we don't get our own truth. You don't have your truth, and I have my truth. There is only the truth. And there are only some things that should be celebrated. And those things, let's call them the summum bonum, the highest good, the things that produce the greatest impact and make the biggest difference in a positive way for society, which I would argue is not two gay men raising boys, because every single child deserves a mother and a father. And the left will immediately try to blackmail you the moment you say that, and they'll call you names. But they know, as well as I do, that every single statistic on the matter shows us that it is best for children to be raised by a mother and a father. Now, if you want to argue exceptions to the rule, that's all you'll be doing, is you'll be trying to make exceptions, but the rule is still the rule. And this is what Christians should be advocating. And it is absolutely preposterous and on full display in a show like Back to the Frontier. Because all you have to do is think about what life was like in the late 19th century to think about how ridiculous it is to celebrate two gay men raising two boys. First of all, biologically impossible. And second of all, didn't really happen. You know why? Because they were so concerned with survival that they didn't have time to wax philosophical about their sexual orientation and sexual identity. They were busy working in fields and trying to produce food so that their family could actually survive. Homosexuality really wasn't on the list of things to do back then because it would have totally eliminated the human race if people practiced it largely. Not to mention, survival was such an important facet of life, they didn't have time for navel gazing. They only had time for the things that truly matter, the highest good. And a show like Back to the Frontier should be celebrating those things, and it wouldn't be hard just to stick to your principles. But unfortunately, Chip and Joanna Gaines didn't. And now I have a question for you.
Do you foresee in the distant future any change in the church's stand, the Catholic Church's stand, and certain issues today which have been quite controversial? Certainly abortion has been. Do you foresee ever any change in that?
No.
Not at all?
No, because we have no power over the divine law. Furthermore, suppose we did. Suppose John Paul II tomorrow said, all right, bring out your contraceptives. Pull out your scalpels. Unplug the children from their wombs. Marry as you please. Unmarry as you please. Fornicate as you please. What would be the difference between the church and the world?
The question is what you just heard cruel? Is what you just heard intolerant? Or is it actually what our world needs to hear, but something they will not hear from anybody but Christians? If you think like I do, the latter, it's time we started saying it instead of caving. All right, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If this show was beneficial to you, you'll love becoming a member over at indythinker.org/support. And you can gain access by becoming a member to all sorts of exclusive perks like ebooks, audiobooks, movies, documentaries, and so much more that will help you find clarity in a confusing world. Don't forget to check out the sponsors down below in the description of this podcast, but most importantly, go with God.